What would an 8-week learning plan for Cypress look like? 8-week Cypress study plan. Week 1, Introduction and Basic Setup, Objectives, Understand the basics of Cypress. Set up the Cypress environment and run simple tests. Topics covered: Introduction to Cypress, Overview and Benefits. Installation and Setup, Install Cypress, set up a new project, and understand the directory structure. Cypress Test Runner, learn how to use the Cypress Test Runner to run tests and navigate its dashboard. First test case, create and run a basic test with sci.visit and sci.contains to verify page content. Understanding assertions, basic assertions using should and expect. Week 2, Core Cypress Commands and Interactions, Objectives, learn to interact with web elements using Cypress. Topics covered: Selecting elements, using sci.get, CSS selectors, IDs, and classes to select elements. Basic interactions, using sci.click, sci.type, sci. Clear, and sci.select, to interact with elements. Handling forms, fill out forms, click buttons, and verify form submission. Assertions, more on common assertions like checking visibility, should, be.visible, text content, should, have.text, and element existence, should, exist. Week 3, Advanced Interactions and Dynamic Elements, Objectives, handle more complex element interactions and asynchronous behavior. Topics covered: Handling dynamic elements, understand how to wait for elements to appear using sci.wait, .should, and .then. Dealing with pop-ups and alerts, using Cypress commands like sci.on, to handle browser pop-ups and alerts. Chaining commands, learn the power of chaining commands in Cypress to write more readable and concise tests. Working with checkboxes and radio buttons, interacting with checkboxes and radio buttons using sci.check and sci.uncheck. Week 4, Custom Commands and Test Data Management, Objectives, create custom commands and manage test data effectively. Topics covered: Creating custom commands, use Cypress, commands.add, to create reusable commands. Using fixtures, manage test data using sci.fixture, and load static data from JSON files. Data-driven testing, implement tests that use different sets of data from fixtures. Environment variables, use environment variables to manage sensitive data and configurations. Week 5, Working with API requests and stubbing, Objectives, understand how to test and mock API requests. Topics covered: API testing with Cypress, use sci.request to make API calls and validate responses. Intercepting network requests, use sci.intercept to intercept and stub network requests. Mocking API responses, learn how to simulate server responses and test front-end behavior without a backend. Assertions on API responses, validate API response status codes, headers, and body content. Week 6, Test Organization and Reusability, Objectives, organize and structure tests for better maintainability. Topics covered: Organizing tests, use describe, and it, blocks to organize tests logically. Setup and teardown with hooks, implement before each, after, and after each, hooks for test setup and cleanup. Grouping tests, categorize tests into different files and folders based on functionality. Refactoring tests, learn best practices for writing clean and reusable test code. Week 7, Debugging and Enhancing Tests, Objectives, learn debugging techniques and enhance tests with visual testing. Topics covered: Debugging tests, use .debug, .pause, and browser developer tools to debug tests. Error handling and retries, implement error handling and use automatic retries for flaky tests. Visual testing with Cypress, introduction to visual testing and using plugins like Cypress Image Snapshot for UI comparisons. Cypress Dashboard, setting up the Cypress dashboard for test recording and parallel execution. Week 8, Cross-browser testing and CI/CD integration, Objectives, run tests on multiple browsers and integrate Cypress into a CI/CD pipeline. Topics covered: Cross-browser testing, run Cypress tests on different browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Edge. Cypress configuration, customize Cypress configurations, cypress.json, for different environments and scenarios. CI/CD integration, integrate Cypress with CI/CD tools like Jenkins, GitHub Actions, or GitLab CI for automated test runs. Best practices and optimization, tips for optimizing test execution and maintaining a robust test suite. 5 Cypress projects for practice. Project 1, Simple to-do list application, description, automate testing for a basic to-do list application that allows adding, editing, and deleting tasks. Key concepts reinforced, selecting elements and interacting with them, sci.get, sci.type, sci.click. Basic assertions for verifying tasks are added or removed. Handling dynamic elements and updating task lists. Project 2, User login and registration, description, write tests for a user authentication workflow, including registration, login, and logout. Key concepts reinforced, form interactions, validations, and assertions. Custom commands for common actions like login and registration. Using fixtures for user data and environment variables for sensitive information. Project 3, e-commerce site product search and cart functionality, description, automate the product search and cart management process on an e-commerce website. Key concepts reinforced, searching and filtering products using different criteria. Interacting with product listings and adding items to the cart. Verifying cart state and total price calculations. API testing for product search and cart update endpoints. Project 4, API testing and mocking for a weather app, description, create automated tests for a weather application that fetches data from an external API. Key concepts reinforced, using sci.request to validate API responses and status codes. Mocking API requests and responses using sci.intercept. Testing error handling by simulating server failures or incorrect data. Combining UI and API testing to ensure data consistency. Project 5, end-to-end testing for a travel booking site, description, automate an end-to-end test flow for a travel booking website, including searching for flights, booking, and payment. Key concepts reinforced, multi-step user journeys and workflow automation. Cross-browser testing and running tests in parallel. Integrating with CI/CD pipelines for automated test execution. Using Cypress Dashboard for test recording and debugging. Tips for successful learning and project execution, hands-on practice, apply concepts by writing tests for small applications, focusing on mastering the core commands. Incremental learning, start with simple interactions and progressively tackle more complex scenarios. Troubleshooting, learn to debug effectively using Cypress's built-in tools and browser developer tools. Documentation, refer to Cypress documentation and community resources for best practices and advanced techniques. Code reviews, review and refactor your test code to ensure maintainability and scalability. This 8-week plan, following the 80-20 rule, focuses on the essential 20% of Cypress concepts that will enable you to build effective test automation frameworks and start working on real-world projects. By the end of this plan, you'll have a strong foundation in Cypress and the confidence to tackle various testing challenges independently.